How's it going, guys? I hope you guys are having a great week. So I'm back today with a rapid review, guys. This one's actually going to be on Dragon Ball Z Kakarot. I finally finished the game last night and I want to weigh in on the game, give my general thoughts and impressions. This obviously is a rapid review, so I haven't written a script at all. Just jotted down some notes on a pad and I'm just going to wing it. So obviously I hope you guys enjoy this format. So Dragon Ball Z Kakarot is not the first Dragon Ball Z game to ever have been released. Actually, it's the 48th in a very long lineup of Dragon Ball games. But for me, it was actually the first game that I have ever played in terms of the Dragon Ball series, and it's the first game I jumped on to check it out. Now, I am a complete Dragon Ball noob. By that, I mean I have never watched the anime and I have never played any previous games. Dante and my friend Edge are massive Dragon Ball fans. They've watched all the anime, particularly Edge, who has played I think every Dragon Ball game, or a lot of them anyway. So he was super hyped about this game, and looking into it and researching it, it just sounded really interesting. And so there's a couple of reasons why I decided to jump in and check it out. Firstly, Dragon Ball Z Kakarot is an action RPG set in a semi-open world where you can pretty much fly around the recreated Dragon Ball Z world and universe. Now, the thought of being able to fly around and explore the world, it just sounded really cool. The second thing that really sparked my interest as well was the fact that this game is developed by CyberConnect 2. Now, that is the team that brought us the Naruto Shippuden Ultimate Ninja Storm games, and I consider those to be some of the best anime adaptations in games, period. They have incredible combat, amazing set pieces, and they really retell the story of Naruto Shippuden quite effectively, and I really enjoyed my experiences with those games. So the fact that CyberConnect 2 were behind Dragon Ball Z Kakarot was the second thing that really sparked my interest. So Dragon Ball Z Kakarot is a good game, it's a fun game, and I really enjoyed my experience with it, but it's definitely not a perfect game. So you obviously have the main campaign. I would probably say that that's the strongest element to the game. You get to play through the Dragon Ball Z sagas, including the Saiyan saga, Frieza, Cell, and Majin Buu saga. I obviously had never watched the anime, so I experienced these for the first time. But for many Dragon Ball Z fans, this will be familiar ground for them. I think a lot of the Dragon Ball Z games have covered the same kind of story arc. So perhaps people that have played the previous games before, when they jump in on this game, might be a little bit disappointed that it's just retreading over familiar ground. But for me, it was the first time for me to experience these story missions and these story arcs, and I really enjoyed playing through. The two best things about the game are absolutely the main story campaign and the combat. So let's talk about the main story campaign. Obviously, CyberConnect 2 have a great track record of really showcasing some of the best bits from the anime. They did so in Storm, and they have done so in Dragon Ball Z Kakarot. The way in which they recreate elements of the anime and the way in which the scenes are animated and the set pieces and the main story beats are incredible. Really fun. I enjoyed every moment of it. I really enjoyed it. Probably my favorite saga was probably the Cell saga, but what's really cool is as you play through the main story campaign, you don't just play as Goku throughout it. You actually get to jump into the role of different characters. So you get to play a little bit of the game as Goku, a little bit as Gohan, Vegeta, Piccolo, and so on. You get to actually jump in and play different characters, and that really makes the story feel fresh and dynamic, and I really enjoyed it. I definitely definitely enjoyed playing through the main story campaign, and it's a pretty decent length game. I actually beat all of the main story campaign in about 35 to 40 hours, so it's a pretty decent length on offer here. Connected to obviously to the main story campaign is the cinematography, the visual design, and also the voice acting. I thought the voice acting on the main story campaign was top notch. I really enjoyed it. I actually played through the game in English. I didn't play it in Japanese, so I don't know what the Japanese equivalent soundtrack is like, but the English voice actors did a very good job, and I really enjoyed it. What I would say is Dante was sat with me as I was playing through it, and he was reacting to things. I think he enjoyed seeing my first time reactions to playing the game, but there were a couple of things that he did talk about that they missed out of the main campaign, that he really didn't understand why these things were not in. Even really famous things like the Vegeta saving it's over 9,000, that was cut out of the game. There were moments in the main campaign, rather than showing certain scenes animated, they just had like a scene on with text which basically described what happened off camera. I would have liked to have seen those things animated and those things shown. I felt particularly the last saga, the Majin Buu saga, was probably the weakest of it, and I would have liked more fleshed out scenes, particularly looking at the World Tournament. But yeah, I still really enjoyed the main campaign, and it was really fun to play, and it was great because it was the first time for me to experience it. So for me it was really enjoyable, and it made me actually want to go back and watch the anime and watch the movies as well, which I think I am going to do now that I've beaten the main campaign and beaten the game. The second thing that was excellent about Dragon Ball Z Kakarot was the combat and the gameplay. The combat in Dragon Ball Z Kakarot is fabulous. It is fantastic. It's really intuitive, you know, the ability to fly and hover, locking on targets. You balance your combat between quick attacks, blocks, parries. There's even an ability to sort of phase out and dodge, and that gives you a window to attack. You also have to balance your ki, and you can use this to unleash some pretty powerful and epic special attacks. And I just really enjoyed the way in which the combat worked. I felt it was really fun and just really easy to get your hands on. If you'd never played a Dragon Ball game before and you were worried about jumping in and taking it on and playing it, you needn't worry. The combat in Dragon Ball Z Kakarot is incredibly easy to get used to, so I really enjoyed it. And then on top of that, there were some excellent boss fights, great set pieces. Each of the different bosses had different move sets and different rhythms that you had to get used to and adapt to, and I just found the combat really fun, really engaging, challenging, but really rewarding. And yeah, there were moments in it that I definitely felt like a Super Saiyan, and it was awesome. Definitely my go-to move was using Kamehameha, and I just really enjoyed the combat. That probably is the best part of the game, which is not surprising because it is a game developed by CyberConnect 2, and they've always been great at creating excellent combat and set pieces. So those are the good things with Dragon Ball Z Kakarot. So let's talk a little bit about the negatives, what the game didn't do well. Well, obviously this is supposed to be a semi-open world RPG, and it's actually the RPG element and the open world element that the game really fails in, that's really mediocre and quite disappointing. The first time that you fly around the semi-open world and you're exploring around and looking for NPCs to talk to and real world events, the first couple of hours are really fun and you do enjoy that flying and exploration, but you very quickly realize that actually the open world is quite boring, actually quite barren, and a lot of the side missions, a lot of the open world exploration is really repetitive, really dull, and really lazy in terms of game development. Really sort of boring and not engaging. And very quickly on for me, it got to a point where the side missions and the side content just became really irritating, and I just found myself, you know, speeding need flying from point A to point B just to continue on the main story, because that's the element I was really enjoying. So what's wrong with the open world elements? Well, firstly, as you explore the open world, it's quite barren. There actually isn't that much to do bar collecting some of the orbs in the world, which you get tons of orbs anyway when you're fighting through the main campaign and beating certain bosses. So there isn't really a need to fly and collect these different orbs. The orbs, of course, you use to level up your characters and unlock super abilities, but it just didn't feel that there was much reward in terms of exploration. These side missions as well tend to be two sorts of side missions. They're either fetch quests or they are fight this enemy or fight this boss. There were a couple of side missions that were different and were fun. There was a really fun side mission where Goku learns to drive, which is ripped out of the anime, and I really enjoyed that. So there were some fun side missions, but generally speaking they were pretty lackluster and pretty poor. All these side missions as well, none of them are voice acted, and for me in 2020 I think that's pretty unforgivable. When we look at games like The Witcher 3 and how their world is so vibrant, their NPCs are all fully voice acted, all have character, and their side missions all seem to have, you know, very real story to them and kind of feel like they have an impact and are important. It's really unforgiving that, you know, Dragon Ball Z Kakarot isn't implementing these kinds of things, particularly when it's touting itself to be a semi-open world RPG, and it's definitely the RPG element that it fails in. There just isn't much point to doing these side missions because you don't actually get very much XP for them, and you don't even get that many rewards, and most of the rewards you do get you can kind of buy from shops and things like that. So there really isn't much point to doing these side missions, and I just found myself towards the end just skipping them because they were so boring, and there was so much potential there from the anime. I mean, there's so much content that Cyber Connect 2 could have picked out from with the anime, with filler missions and side content. They could have just ripped voice acting from that. They could have made it really fun and really engaging, and they just didn't, unfortunately. The open world events as well were quite boring. Generally speaking, as you're flying around the map, there are enemies that if you get too close to them, that will suddenly hone in on you and interrupt your flight and attack you. But these enemies were always the same. They're either like these robots that you have to fight, or these freezer minions that you have to fight, and they're one or the other, and they become very irritating very, very quickly, because as you're trying to explore and carry out a side mission and do these content and fetch this and fetch that, you have these open world events that happen and fly in and interrupt you, and they just became really annoying very, very quickly. There really isn't that much RPG for me. Yes, there is a skill tree that you can unlock. You can pick or choose what abilities you want to use and equip, so I guess to a degree it's kind of an RPG in that way, and in the ability to sort of level up your character as well. And you do also have these community coins that you collect, and those will also give you buffs and boosts in terms of your stats, and if you pair certain ones together, they are kind of cool because they have kind of a conversation and have an extra sort of boosted effect. I enjoyed that element of it, but generally speaking I thought the open world was really, really poor. And then once you've completed the main campaign, the end game content on offer here as well is pretty weak as well. So Dragon Ball Z Kakarot was a fun game. I enjoyed my experience with it. I'm glad I picked it up and played it, but I don't think I would buy this game at full price. If I was to give this a score, I probably would give it a 7 out of 10. Purely because it was the first Dragon Ball game I ever played, and it was my first experience with that main story campaign from Dragon Ball Z. I think if you had played the previous Dragon Ball games, and because these story beats are exactly the same as the ones covered in previous installments, you might give it a lower score of maybe 6 out of 10. But definitely the best elements were the combat and the main campaign for me. But the game is held back by its very weak side missions, side content, and really boring kind of open world. It does show that there is potential there, and hopefully if there is a sequel, hopefully they'll cover some completely new areas in terms of the story, and hopefully, you know, if CyberConnect 2 get their hands back on the game, hopefully they will really flesh out those side missions, that side content, and the open world. And it has potential to be really good, but it doesn't quite realize it here. So there you go, guys. There is my review of Dragon Ball Z Kakarot. Let me know what you guys think of the game and the review in the comment section below. Hope you guys enjoyed this format. Again, it's just getting my thoughts out there. Obviously today Ori and the Will of the Wisps comes out, so we'll be live streaming that tonight and hopefully finishing that in a couple of days, and I will try and write a script for that for a review. But yeah, anyway, I hope you guys are having a great week. Thank you again for all your support. Please hit the like button if you enjoyed the video. Please comment. Please remember to subscribe and hit the bell notification for updates on any future content. If you would like to support the channel, you can do so by doing all those things, or if you want to support in other ways, you can jump onto Patreon and look at becoming a member, or you can also join and become a member of the YouTube channel as well. But anyway, you guys can show your support is massively appreciated. Anyway, hope you guys have a great week. Take care, and as always, happy gaming. Bye, guys.